About 118 people sit on the boards of directors of the 10 biggest media companies. These 118 people, in turn, are on the corporate boards of 288 national and international corporations. 8 of the Big 10 media giants share common membership on each other's boards of directors. So that's how the bourgeoisie works. This integration occurs at the very pinnacle of corporate power. For instance, board members of ABC, Disney, NBC, that's GE, CBS, CNN, Fox, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Tribune Company, Gannett, and Knight Ridder also sit on the boards of 13 of the Fortune 500's 25 most profitable companies, and probably have indirect connections to the other 12. This linkage forms a huge matrix of interlocking corporations and monopolies, usually with banks at the center, that control the U.S. and, to a large extent, the world economy. Now, which corporations benefit the most from vilifying the people and governments of the Middle East? Which ones benefit the most? The oil companies, right? Now, these companies pull in the most profits of any companies in the world. And in 2010, ExxonMobil, which is the largest U.S. oil company, occupied 8 of the 10 slots of the largest quarterly profits, earnings of all times, and 5 of the 10 largest annual corporate slot earnings. Chevron and Conoco, the second and third largest of the U.S. oil giants, were not much behind. In 2008, ExxonMobil made $1,300 a second. While these oil companies operate all over the world, their profit empires are mostly dependent on control of the cheap oil of the Gulf states. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and once again Iraq. Notice the Gulf states are the ones leading the political charge against Syria right now. And the fact that they are willing to pump as much oil as possible means that the U.S. and the Western imperialists can boycott Iran. They can have an oil boycott against Iran. The media monopolies have interlocking directorates with big oil. General Electric, NBC, for instance, interlocks with Mobil, CNN with Chevron, Knight Ridder with Phillips Petroleum, the New York Times with Texaco, whose parent company is Chevron. And this mix is not just between the media and the oil companies. The U.S. government is right in there. In 1944, the U.S. was becoming the dominant force in the Middle East. The U.S. State Department described the Middle East oil as, quote, I gotta have another, pardon me. Anyway, the State Department called Middle East oil a suspended source of strategic power and one of the greatest material prizes in the world. It's still the same. That's what they think. This is so much the case that so many politicians today are often groomed for their political role by first working for oil and related companies. For instance, Condoleezza Rice prepared for her role as George Bush's National Security Advisor and then Secretary of State by serving on Chevron's board of directors and even heading the oil giants' Committee on Public Policy. Former Secretary of Defense and Vice President Dick Cheney, who was also CEO of Halliburton, which services the oil fields, once explained, quote, "In the oil and gas business, I deal with many of the same people as he did when he was VP." So this is why Washington officials, Chevron, and the New York Times speak with one voice. Oil companies are not the only U.S. companies making money hand over fist. Arms sellers are awash in profits, In 2005, for instance, the top military contractors had a record 25 to 30 billion in cash in their coffers. Where are the governments that purchase the lion's shares of U.S. weapons? In the Middle East. Israel, the biggest buyer of U.S. weaponry, $3 billion a year. The second biggest, Egypt, $2 billion a year. Saudi Arabia just signed a contract to purchase $50 billion in U.S. weapons. All that inflated prices because there are no competition. Remember, it was about 10 years ago, there was a big controversy, a scandal about the $800 toilet seat that the Pentagon was selling. Well, you know that's what's going on. No competition. And where are the death merchants' bombs and guns most likely to be used up so that more can be sold? The Middle East. And then there is the incestuous relationship between big oil, the weapons makers, and the media. Oil companies want a strong military presence in the Middle East to protect them from the people whose resources they exploit. In addition, the military machine that protects the oil companies' interests is itself the largest consumer of oil in the world. And guess what happens to oil prices when the Pentagon uses its bombs and planes in the Middle East, or even threatens to, like right now? They go through the roof, and everybody's really happy, and they're laughing all the way to the bank. So when the Pentagon kills, either directly or through proxies like Israel, the oil companies make a killing. What a sweet deal. And because the media monopolies interlock with both, they're in on the take when both make profits. How does the media exert its influence? How does the military exert its influence on the media? Well, let's look at some of the interlocks. I don't have information on the weapons dropped on Libya, the U.S. weapons dropped on Libya. I don't think it's completely out yet, but it's out on what was used in the Gaza war. It was used by Israel in Gaza. So let's look. Boeing provided the deadly small diameter bombs dropped on Gaza that explode and the kind of percussion bombs that they talked about, where people die from the inside out. A Disney company has a direct link with Boeing. Lockheed Martin, the F-16 jets and guided missile systems used by Israel in Gaza. Lockheed Martin has interlocking directorates with the Washington Post and Gannett. Caterpillar makes related stuff. They make these giant bulldozers used to bulldoze Palestinian villages. And they delivered the Caterpillar that killed Rachel Corrie. Remember? She stood in front of a bulldozer in Gaza, and the bulldozer, they ran her over. Caterpillar interlocks with the Tribune Company, the owner of Chicago Tribune and the Los Angeles Times. Raytheon makes the bunker buster bombs, flew by the U.S. to Israel in the height of the Lebanon war to be used in Lebanon and also used in Gaza. Raytheon is interlocking directorates with the New York Times. And then also, of course, the media welcomes ads from the military. Lockheed Martin, the biggest death merchant of all, is a major advisor on CNN, which is owned by Time Warner. And Boeing is also a major funder of PBS's Washington Week. So PBS is in on the take, too. Let's not leave them out.